Adam, I'm just going to intro the session. Great to see you this morning. But it is Mental Health Awareness Week. And I can't believe it, but it's a year anniversary since the global launch of Head Up from L'Oréal Professionnel Paris. So the brand remains absolutely committed to providing tangible, action-oriented skills, which hairstylists can use daily to assist with their own mental health fitness. And Adam, what a fantastic advocate you are for that. So welcome and thank you for joining me this morning. It's great to see you.
So great to see you, and it's always a pleasure to come and have a chat.
It's lovely, isn't it? And we were just reminiscing that the last time you and I did a live was in the pandemic and was actually on the topic of mental health and
Yeah,
the struggles that people were facing in that time. So I think you are a phenomenon in many ways. You are a phenomenal hairdresser, but you are a fantastic advocate for being open and honest about mental health. And you openly share your own personal struggles. And kind of today, what would be really good to do is to chat through your own kind of mental health fitness journey, the struggles you've had that you're prepared to talk about,
yeah,
the
of
tools that
course.
you find helpful personally and professionally. But actually, let's start with kind of an introduction to you and your journey as a hairdresser. So I obviously know your history and feel very fortunate to have known you for a very, very long time and been part of that journey. So take us back, because obviously, kind of when I started and knew you were working for Charles Worthington
Yes.
in London. So give people a little brief synopsis of that journey.
So I actually started hairdressing when I was 13. I was as a Saturday boy. We were allowed to work back then, and actually my work ethic was hugely driven by the fact that I didn't like school. I didn't do very well at school, and this is sort of quite integral, really, to this story that you're going to hear, because I think awareness is key to mental health. And we're here talking about this today because it's a conversation that's happening. Um,
Yeah,
and interestingly, I didn't like school. I never felt that I was properly educated at school because of the way that my mind worked.
yeah,
But what hairdressing and the hairdressing community gave me was exactly that, a community which, knowing me, that I've always loved to be a part of the community. And I've not found it easy.
yeah,
And as I learned about my mental health and learned about the fact that for me, health is health, whether it's physical, whether it's mental,
yeah,
it's all about health. I really have struggled my whole career with ill mental health. But what's always driven me is, number one, my love of creating, being creative, and also my love of laughing. Um,
yeah.
Often people say, when I'm around, I've got this big, booming, projecting voice. But also, you often hear me laughing or pissing around or having fun. And again, I've come to
Absolutely.
learn a lot of that comes down to how I manage what goes on up there.
Okay.
Has it hindered my career? Yes, I do think at certain points it has. But also from a community perspective, it's what's really given me something to strive to be a part of.
Yeah.
As you know, I gave up drinking alcohol 14 years ago, which is an unbelievable feat, really. And I gave up alcohol because of the way that it affected probably my behavior, actually. And what's interesting now is, as I look back and as I'm learning about the way that my mind works,
Yeah.
actually, it was very much to do with my social anxiety and the fact that I really struggled to go out. You've seen me outside of events before, literally getting enough
Yeah. I have
strength just to be able to walk in, and
to go in.
I'll often leave and walk away, but because I just can't really cope with a lot of what goes on in social situation. But I've traveled the world. I find it very easy to get up on stage, or, oh, I've got a little doggy come to see me here.
Oh,
Don't know who this is.
I love it.
Oh, um, as you can see, I'm very easily distracted as well. That's
That's
another
fine.
learning about
That's
my
not a
mental
problem.
health.
In
Um,
good news, Maisie's not here. Otherwise, she would be
I know.
joining this live.
And if I was at home, I'd have four of them jumping all over me.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but actually, as the conversation opened up on a more global level, I really felt, I've been very open about me giving up alcohol and
Yes, you have.
sobriety within our industry, because drinking culture is everywhere, but we do like a drink. And actually, when I made the decision not to drink anymore, thinking I was a full-on alcoholic, I really then struggled with how my mind worked and what it allowed me to do. I was only diagnosed 2 years ago with extreme ADHD, paranoia, anxiety, severe anxiety, manic depression. Um, so when you start to learn about it, it gives you a better understanding. But actually, I've I've struggled my whole life.
Yeah.
From a young boy being bullied at school, you know, standing out in the way that I dress, being a hairdresser. You know, we
Yeah.
often talk about this, but the stigma and stereotypical elements of what people considered a hairdresser. When you're being bullied, I was only pumping that up. And
Yeah.
all of that really did affect my mind. And we talk about trauma and triggering and learned behaviors. And actually, when you struggle to manage what goes on in your head, it's difficult.
Yeah, it
My
is.
sort of continuum throughout this has been my career until I met Kenny.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
of course, and it was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, I'm a massive believer in, as I said earlier, health is health, and society stigmatized mental health. You were seen
Uh,
as a madman. You know, when you hear
yeah.
somebody who is slightly struggling, actually to
Yeah.
say that they're mad or they're a loon or whatever is easier than to say, actually, do you know what? They're not very well.
Yeah. And
And
they need
if
some help and
and
support.
they need some help, and they may need to be medicated. They may need
Yeah.
somebody to talk to. The support, like we said, is it's key. And
And
actually, for
it is that
me,
stigmatism, isn't it? That's kind of, I think, and why companies and businesses, so L'Oreal doing Head Up, for
absolutely,
example, and companies supporting and salons supporting that, um, it sends a really positive message because we were talking earlier. I know when I was growing up, I had a family member who had severe mental
yes,
health difficulties, but there was nobody to talk to, or and you absolutely didn't talk about it because, as you say, it was hugely stigmatized, and it was like it was almost a shameful thing to talk about.
do you know what, Jay? You're so true. And actually, it's been made to be a shameful thing, which is such a shame. My grandfather was very ill, and he actually ended up taking his own life when I was 13. And
Oh,
you learn a lot about what goes on in somebody's mind when you find out that somebody feels it's easier to end their life instead of
yeah,
working on it. And
carrying
that
on.
that massive amount of that comes from stigmatism.
Yeah,
Stigmatism, yeah, that's the right word.
it is.
And it's interesting because you know a lot of creative people. We look at neurodiversity, and it's something that I'm obviously really interested in. Creatives have a tendency to be more within the spectrum, and you know maybe struggle with certain elements. And when we look at the spectrum, it's not as clear cut as anybody would think. It's a,
No,
you know, if you looked at it as a circle and thought about um, the planets and everything, because that's
yeah,
how I tend to visualize it in my head. Everything is moving and it's all going all over the place. And actually, to pinpoint one area, it's quite difficult. But
yeah,
actually, as a creative mind, being more neurodiverse than neurotypical, we
yeah,
will tend to edge into more struggles with our mental health. So you know, as an industry, it is quite washed with people who struggle,
yeah. And
and
you,
saying that we didn't talk about it and it was stigmatized. You know, we're often asked to work extremely long hours. That
yeah,
leads to burnout. But actually, with the way that our mind works, we don't see a clock in, clock out. So
no,
actually, we'll work until it's finished, until we're exhausted, and we tend to go on to the next thing, and
yeah.
instantly,
Keep going. You keep
yeah,
going.
and we
So,
think
I
that
mean,
that's the right way to go. It's not.
and I mean, it's also worth noting that Head Up is available free to everybody on L'Oreal Access. So you
Yep.
don't have to be a L'Oreal account to access it or to utilize it. So absolutely, people should go on and use the tools and stuff. And how have you transitioned from, because obviously you were working as part of a team and you've
Yep.
openly said you were struggling with your mental health then, and then to being a salon owner and a manager and a boss and responsible for people. So that's obviously, but they're quite different roles and different experiences. So how have you kind of how have you done that personally, and how do you help now your team manage their stress and mental health?
So do you know what? It's bringing in people that actively support. So it's,
Right.
you'll often hear me talk about no man is an island.
Yeah.
I make sure I've got people around me who understand how I feel. We have a very open communication policy. And I think that's one of the best tools because actually, and I always say this for me, talking about it is better off outside of here.
And in here.
Sometimes, and then it's better off
Yeah.
outside because
Yeah.
I have a tendency, whilst it's in there, to catastrophize. And we really quickly touched on this. I'll go to the worst case scenario and I'll
Yeah.
absolutely focus on that. And it's very detrimental to being productive, both personally and professionally. And so I encourage an open communication policy. I make sure I've got people around me who understand and I understand them.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy and it's not as cut and dry as I'm talking about because you still get the wrong people and you still find it can be thrown back at you, which I think is quite an upsetting thing. Somebody not being great at their job and you talking about it, but then they turn around and say, but you're an advocate for mental health. And I'm like, but I'm also a human being.
Yeah.
I get
And
that
also
quite a lot.
but you still have to be able to do the job that you need people to do. I'm assuming that's what you're
Absolutely.
referring to. So in terms of kind of
Yes,
practical professional skills. Yeah.
absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head there. But also
But it's being compassionate,
it's
isn't it? And
yes,
understanding and helping people manage the stresses that everyday life throws at all of us. And
totally. And
everybody deals with it in a very different way.
yeah, and we chatted about the last 4 years and how things have hugely changed. And my
Yeah.
big hope, and I know we chatted about this, was that people would be more empathetic and
Yeah.
compassionate. And actually, I'm not quite sure if people are. And I think it's easy to band around ill mental health. Um, but it's a two-way street. It really is. And
Yeah.
actually, I appreciate the ability to be able to talk. And again, Head Up has really opened up some doors. And it's in its infancy. It's only a year
Yeah.
old, and we're learning. But what it's done is it's opened up doors to say, actually, do you know what? It really is okay to talk about this, and
Yeah.
it is okay to take some time for yourself. And authenticity is key to that. Again, a word that's bandied around massively.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But and it's interesting. I was listening recently to this whole sick note thing within
Right.
the bigger
Yeah.
conversation, and I was like, do you know what? The sick note sort of concept, that's not just about mental health. It's about any type of health, and actually it's being really true to yourself,
Yeah.
and being very honest about how you feel. I would have no qualms if I'd broken my leg to walk out with a plaster on my leg and people would understand. It's
Yeah.
harder when it's going on in your head, but rest assured, I know, and I spoke about this recently. I've struggled pretty much every day of my life with ill mental health and struggling with maintaining mental fitness, which I call it, because for me it's just about how I manage what goes on in my head. But that's been there
Yeah.
every single day of my life. And
Yeah.
actually, with physical illness, it can come in and out. And of course, some people aren't very well. My grandmother being one of them, she physically wasn't very well her whole life. So I do fully understand that. But actually, when your head is bad, you don't switch it on and off. And sometimes
No.
it's a lot worse. And
No, I
sometimes it's a
understand.
bit better, but it's always there.
Do you think, I think things like L'Oréal Access and Head Up, that they are ensuring that our industry is much more open to talking about mental health and having that awareness and being able to support friends, colleagues, peers.
Totally.
Um, and often that, and I don't know what you think, but it doesn't always seem to be replicated across other sectors,
Not
other
at all.
markets, and the wider world. Do you feel
I
that?
totally agree, Jane. And what's very interesting, as I said earlier, as a creative industry led by a predominance of creatives,
Yeah.
we will see more mental health struggles. And what is amazing is that a huge corporation have gone, actually, this is our community. And if we look after our community, we will be able to grow and we will be able to strive to be better.
Yeah.
And actually, it's giving people the tools and the insights and the ability just to open up. And I think, number one,
Yeah.
it's very brave. But number two, it is an absolute necessity, especially in our career. And, I went to teach ID artists recently, and Head Up was a huge part of it. And then
Yeah.
to hear and talk to people after it, I was like, no, we are categorically going in the right direction
Yeah.
to allow people to thrive, but also to live a very honest life. And that's what's key, because anybody who's struggling with ill mental health lies to themselves continuously that they're
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
that they can cope. And a lot of us are high functioning, so we just get on and do it. And the detriment of that is the fact that we spend a lot of our time exhausted. We focus too
Yeah.
much on the wrong things, and we don't focus evenly throughout life.
On the good,
We
yeah.
bundle it in, and then
And
we're,
only see the worst at times. That's the
yes,
thing, isn't it? It's like you
yes,
say, you go to the point of catastrophizing rather than actually, today's been a really good day because this, and this happened. Okay, that didn't go so well, but that's one
so true,
thing. But it's
so
easier
true.
said than done. And
It
I think
really is. But
it's
sorry,
having that
as you,
awareness, it's having that awareness of Head Up and those kind and campaigns such as that, and just having the ability to talk openly. We've had someone's watching Adam Colette Osborne and said, loving the fact we're having an open conversation about it because so many salon owners suffer in silence. And I think she's right. And I was going to come to that. She said, you are an inspiration to so many. I think
oh,
sometimes, hairdressing, whether you're a salon owner or a stylist or self-employed, it can be quite a lonely space because who do you talk to about your business struggles? And then if there's business issues that you then
yep.
become bigger and bigger and bigger, that will impact on your personal life. It's how how do you I mean, what's your advice for people in that situation?
Honestly, Jane, it's talking about it. And okay, so my thing here is, and I've strived to not be an egotistical hairdresser.
Yeah.
But ego is actually really important, because having an ego is often what drives you. This isn't a negative, and
No.
it's seen as a negative. It comes down to being able to openly talk about it, because, like we said, when it is in here, it's hard, and we feel that there is shame and embarrassment, and it's going to affect how people see us. We all go through those struggles, and actually, at the moment, society isn't really set up in any way, shape, or form to help us out. And it
Yeah.
isn't. We're all striving, we're all struggling to manage what is going on in the world, not just what's going on in our heads.
Yeah.
And actually, you often find, and this was one of my things when I first spoke about suffering from anxiety, that's how I opened the conversation. The amount of people that came to me and said, whether it be in a message, whether it be in an event, people came up and said, thank you so much, because you speaking out has made me feel less reluctant to share it.
Yeah.
And it has made me feel like I'm not on my own. And Jane,
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. Nobody is ever on
Yeah.
their own.
No,
And
they're not.
we're not brought onto this world to be a, a continual positive inspiration for everything that goes right, because we are all making really, really good decisions, and we all make really bad decisions, and circumstance has a
Absolutely.
huge effect on what we do there. And
Yeah.
a lot of the time, we're just trying to get through life. Um,
Yeah.
and I said this recently when I was talking about Head Up. Like, people often say to me, you talk so openly, and your struggles are quite evident. What gives you the will to carry on and to just keep going? And do you know what it is for me, Jane? It's the fact that I actually love life so much. I love
Yeah.
the earth. I love people. I love animals. I love
Yeah.
making, we go back to what we started talking about. I do love making people laugh. I love people making me laugh.
Yeah.
And above anything else, that's what really
Counts.
helps me to think,
Yeah.
do you know what? You may wake up tomorrow feeling just that little bit better and be able to get through. Having the tools that things like Head Up
Yeah.
or positive social media communication, positive communication in real life, or ringing somebody and saying, you know, I saw
Absolutely.
that you were struggling. Can I just have a quick chat? Makes a huge
Yeah.
difference. Little
Or just
things
dropping a
making a big
text.
difference.
Or just
Totally.
dropping a text to say, thinking of you, here if you need
Yeah.
me. People need to know that other people care. I think that's,
So
we must
true.
never lose that empathy and compassion for each other. So practical things that you do, to manage your own mental fitness. I mean, I know you absolutely love your dogs, which we were talking about before. So,
Yep.
and you've got family. So what do you do? So when Adam reads, they're in the moment, what do you do for you to help you?
Move. I walk. And
Okay.
again, I've always done that. I will always try my best to get out and get some fresh air. And as I've matured, both in age, but also in my mind, I've realized the real importance of getting out in a bit of movement, shaking myself down. I'm a ticker, so I do move a
Yeah.
lot and I twiddle and
Yeah.
what have you. That all helps. Breath work really helps. So
Okay.
I've learned some breathwork techniques. Again, I think it's a very personal thing. So find somebody that helps and you can work with, and talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, it's the best thing in the world. And I will say, and Kenny, my husband, I'll often say to him, babe, I'm going to say this. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily need a response. I don't need you to give me an opinion if you don't want to. But I know that when I say it, it's going to make sense as it's coming out of my mouth,
Yeah.
because it's not
Yeah.
making sense in here.
Yeah.
And it's not being scared, because actually, do you know what? To say I'm struggling and it's making me feel sick and I'm finding it difficult to breathe, and
Yeah.
I am finding it difficult to talk to somebody because my innate instinct at the moment is to cry. That's not an embarrassing thing to say to somebody, because we all do it. And do
Yeah,
you
we
know
do.
what? You've seen me crying and you've seen me stressed and you've seen me laughing
Yeah.
my tits off, but I
Yeah.
really am
And
like,
ditto, right back at you. You seem in the same
absolutely.
state. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, don't be scared to look at things that have really brought you positivity and talk about it. I talk a lot about storytelling, but there's
Yeah.
nothing nicer than you telling a story to a group of people and you all belly laughing after.
You're absolutely right. Because
And we
laughter
all
just
have it,
makes you
don't
feel
we?
better. Yeah, of
It
course.
really does,
Laughter
because
makes
it's
you feel
pumping
better.
endorphins through you.
Yeah.
And we've seen it, and we, when we all get together and we're taking the Mickey and um we're getting on, and on that, always have good intention and always think of somebody's intention, because it really makes you feel better. So
Yeah, it does.
when, if you're finding something stressful and you need to talk about it, think about how it may affect somebody. Think about the intention behind it. And
Yeah.
if your intention is to make yourself feel better and to slightly lift that weight off of your shoulders, then you're doing the right thing. And you can do
Yeah.
it in an atmosphere where there's a lot of people, or you could take somebody aside and say, I just need 5 minutes.
I just need
And
5
I'm
minutes
just
to
going to
talk
say
to you.
this, and I don't necessarily need
Yeah.
anything back from this. I don't need you to advise me or anything. What I need
No.
here is just to remove it from where I'm struggling to decipher that
And what
thing.
what advice would you give to people? But not even advice, but what key things should people be looking out for, what in themselves and perhaps in colleagues and other people that would make you concerned that they might be struggling and need some extra support?
So mood swings is key, and
Yeah.
they can be very minute. Um, and it could be that somebody is suffering from extreme stress. I'm talking from that absolute experience for myself. I can be
Yeah.
hyperactive for a minute, and then I could look and I'll be feeling extremely exhausted and quite retrospective. That's a really
Okay.
important thing to look about, because actually, if somebody's retrospective, they tend to be going inside their head a bit.
Yeah.
And it may be good, it may be bad. Exhaustion, not eating properly.
Yeah.
I'm the worst person for that. I can go for days without properly eating, and it's terrible. It's terrible for your head. But again, that's something that's conditioned and programmed in my mind. Um, Anger, so bouts of
Okay.
anger, and
So
that's
quick to
quite
rise.
important. Quick to rise, yeah, not being able to
Yeah.
regulate your emotion.
Yeah.
So regulation really is key. And if somebody looks like they're not as regulated as normal, check in,
Yeah.
um, because that's really, really important. And of course, looking absolutely exhausted. Because if
Yeah,
you are struggling with ill mental health, it's highly unlikely you're sleeping properly. Doesn't mean you're
yeah,
not sleeping, but it would probably mean you're up a lot of the night. And then just
yeah.
as you should be getting up, you fall into a very deep sleep.
Deep sleep.
Yeah. And then you wake up exhausted after
Yeah,
about 10 minutes of a deep sleep. So you're quite disoriented. And then things like drinking too much coffee, not drinking enough water, drinking too much alcohol,
yeah,
overdoing everything. But also be very respectful of people's boundaries. And this is a big part of ill mental health. Um, we're not respectful of our own boundaries, really,
yeah.
because
And
we
not
struggle to
everybody
put them
wants
in
to share.
place.
Not everybody
Totally.
wants to share, do they? Not everybody,
And
and
if
not everybody feels
somebody's
able to share.
Totally. And if somebody says, actually, I'm not drinking at the moment, never force somebody to drink. If somebody
No.
says, I'm not going to be able to come out tonight, I'm just going to go home, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
absolutely fine. And do you know what? It's the tiny little check-ins that make a difference. If somebody says that to you,
Yeah,
just say, "Oh, is everything all right at the moment?" And
yeah,
most of the time they'll come back and say, "Yeah, I'm just a bit tired." Being
yeah,
tired is absolutely fine. That is not a negative, and it's not a bad point. And it's being really respectful of people's boundaries because,
no, I
again,
get it.
we struggle to put those into place. And you'll know, and I've said it so many times, I no is not in my vocabulary. And
Yeah,
to my detriment, I've said and still do yes to things that I categorically shouldn't be doing because it is affecting my mental health, whether
yeah,
it's not allowing me to sleep, I'm working too long hours, I'm not working,
yeah,
whatever it is. I'm
I
drinking
know.
too much coffee to get through the day. These things are not healthy.
No. Thank you so much. I can't believe we're out of time because we could talk all day. We said this before we started. We could literally be
I
here all
know,
day.
and I kept trying not to butt in with you, but I was
No,
like, I
no,
can't
it was
help it with you,
brilliant.
Jane.
It was, oh, it's fab. Thank you so
But
much.
and I would
Adam,
also quickly, just as we leave, I
yeah, of
would
course.
say, just take a look at Head Up and see what L'Oreal
Yeah,
and the wider team are doing. There's, we're all involved in coming up with really incredible solutions for people who are struggling with their mental fitness. Really worth just having
absolutely.
a look.
No, so I've asked the team to drop in the comments below this live the L'Oréal Professional Paris access and then where to go for Head Up so that people
Fab.
can have a look. Huge thanks to L'Oréal Professional
So,
Paris and the
of
team.
course.
But especially to you, my love, for this morning. Hugely appreciate your time. There's lots of love for you in the comments, I'm sure. It's been great to spend some time with you.
It's
And
always
thank
great to
you.
spend
And
time with you.
you are genuinely inspirational in the fact that you're so open and honest when you're talking about it. And I think that just makes it gives other people permission almost to feel they can talk
I
about things
hope it
too.
does. I
Yeah.
do hope
So
it does. And that
thank
would be
you.
my one sort of leaving statement, just
Yeah.
to open up. It's nowhere
Yeah.
near as hard as you think it's going to be.
No, you need to find your someone and be honest with them, don't you? That's the thing.
Very much so.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. And I look forward to seeing
Pleasure.
you very soon.
I'll see
Take
you very
care.
soon, Jane. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.